Shalom. Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, RAWCHAA, QADASH. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations as always to the elect. Rolling in the spirit real quick, as you can read on the screen. All right, Hebrews the 3rd chapter. Harden not your hearts as in a day of provocation, in a day of temptation in the wilderness. And, you know, we're likening to a wilderness scenario here where, you know, Yahweh sent the angel to deliver the Israelites, showed them, you know, various marvelous things, you know, by the hand of his angel, and plagues on Egypt and all of these various different things to free them from the captivity of the Egyptians, right? And we know that we're in a spiritual Egypt, all right? And after that, he had them in the wilderness, you know, for a period of 40 years where he tempted them, all right? And the purpose of it, when you look at it in the spirit of that wilderness scenario, was for Israel, all right, to separate themselves from Egypt, you know, get the hope of Egypt off of them, get the vibration of Egypt off of them, and hope for their own sovereign, you know, kingdom where they would ultimately be given laws on how to govern themselves, the first covenant, the priesthood, and all of these various different things. And when you look at Israel's response, you know, for 40 years, there was a generation that the Lord was grieved with. You know, they gave Moses, you know, Aaron pure hell. You know, the leadership was given pure hell. And, you know, the overall mindset that really, you know, jacked Israel up and got them judged by the Lord and made them, you know, as you could see here, the Lord was not pleased with that generation. All right, they were, it says, and when your fathers tempted me and proved me and saw my works for 40 years, they saw the miracles. All right, wherefore I was grieved with that generation and said that they do always err in heart, and they have not known my ways. So I was angry with them, and I said, their hearts always turn away from me. They refuse to do what I tell them. So in mine anger, I took an oath that they shall not enter into my rest. They shall never enter into the rest. And ultimately, there was a whole generation that had to die off. And then ultimately, there was a new generation brought in, the book of Deuteronomy, where the covenant was reintroduced to that generation, with even stricter penalties, you know, the curses. And, you know, we eventually end up going off again. But, you know, what we could take from that, you know, wilderness scenario, if you read the book of Numbers, you know, you can get that understanding. You can read Exodus, Numbers. You know, our people didn't want to embrace the will of Yahweh Bashim Shai. You know, the things that they had to leave behind in Egypt. Okay. In spirit, they weren't ready to leave it behind. In spirit, they wanted to look back. You know, even after the Lord judged and plagued the place and showed them his power, they you know, they hardened their hearts. And, you know, there's a lot of believers who are, you know, getting demons plaguing them, which we all have to battle. We all have to fight. This is a fight. You know, the scriptures say hope deferred maketh the heart sick. So we're hoping for something. All right. But while we're hoping, you know, we're looking at nothing but failure. We're catching hell. We're going through ailments in our body. You know, we want our will to be done, and we're battling with, you know, what we want, you know, instead of embracing what we need. The Lord's given us what we need, you know, outside of what we want. You know, we have all of these temptations that are, you know, plaguing our spirits, man, plaguing our minds. You know, this is the concept of the flesh versus the spirit, you know, being dead to the world because we were once dead bodies, all right, erring in spirit, you know, and then once we become alive, we become dead to this world, but alive in YAHAWASHI. Okay, and that process can get bitter. You know, it can get very, very bitter. All right. And one thing we don't want to do is start to downplay what Yahawah Shai has done and what is doing. All right. Because, you know, we want the kingdom. We want sovereignty. We want a place where righteousness doth abide. All right. But we have to understand that the remnant were born into the earth to see, all right, the Lord's miracles. Okay. We're witnessing miracles as we see these prophecies coming to pass. Literally, we're witnessing things that were foretold, you know, thousands of years ago, happen in our day. And that has to be, you know, the coping mechanism. That has to be the hope, you know, that drives your belief. As the scriptures say, you know, stay, you know, abounding, you know, be rooted, unmovable, abounding, you know, in Yahawah Shai. All right. Because these demons are, you know, I'm starting to, you know, listen to, you know, brothers fight. We're all going through, there's a change happening in the spirit. Things are different. The atmosphere is different. The food is different. You know, even amongst brothers, there's a sense of, you know, we're going to have to work out our own salvation. Okay. And of course, it was always like that. But as we get closer and closer into, you know, the day of, what is it called? The hour of temptation. Now, remember, Yahweh Shai wanted, you know, Peter and the different apostles to be awake with him, you know, while he was catching hell and vexed and knowing what he had to go through. But that was for him. You know, the Garden of Gethsemane moment, you know, you know, certain temptations, certain things the Lord only has for you. And no one else can comfort you through it. No one else could, you know, talk you through it or be with you through it. It's your trial. And we all have our own trial, even your children. As crazy as that sounds, the Lord birthed them into the earth. They're going to have their own story. We all hope, you know, that our wives, our children, you know, are delivered under us. But, you know, some of them are going to have their own path if they're delivered. All right. Some of them are going to have to go through trials and temptation and tribulation. Right. And it's like, damn. You know, so each and every one of us are going to have to work out our own salvation, and the Lord is going to work in his elect within that, you know, tribulation. But again, harden not your hearts. You know, there's a spirit, you know, trying to creep into believers that we're missing out on something, that what we have is not enough, you know, you know, that in itself, all right, could make you lose hope, and that can make you undermine what Yahawah Shai has done with us and is doing to Babylon the Great. Okay? So it says, take heed, brethren, lest there be any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living power. You know, as we're, you know, we've been given, you know, great teachers. We've been given a great, you know, understanding through the Holy Spirit. You know, it's like now, as this world is fading away, you're starting to, you know, get the sense of, damn, I missed out. Damn, I really, you know, gave my life up. Yes, the scriptures, you know, talk about, you know, and look to Yahweh Shai, look to the men of the Lord. You know, remember, Peter was like, we gave up everything to follow you. What shall we there get in return? So you're going to have them thoughts, but, you know, a lot of demons are trying to creep up and in particular spirits, as if, you know, this world fading away and, you know, us not traveling like we wanted, us not having what we wanted, us not receiving, you know, this, you know, Bill Cosby family type environment where, you know, I was a perfect husband, you know, perfect wife, perfect children, you know, they go to college, you know, and, you know, you start to talk to people who aren't in the world, and you hear, you know, and they try to portray themselves like they got it together and shit is all good, and you get jealous and all manner of demons, whatever it may be. You know, everyone has their own fight, their own plight. All right, whatever it may be, take heed that there be not in any of you an evil heart of unbelief and departing from the living power, man. Giving up hope and shitting on everything that we've received so far, because more is coming. But we've received a lot, and we have a lot to be thankful for. As much, you know, complaining and things that we can do, we do have a lot to be thankful for, man. But exhort one another daily, why it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. All right? And this word hardened, I gotta roll out. But this word hardened, right? You didn't miss out on anything. The script, this thing was about not loving your life unto death. Okay? That doesn't mean you just throw, you don't, we're here, you use the world as not abuse it. You still got to live. You got to do things, right? But in the grand scheme of things, harden, skleruno, to make hard, harden metaphorically, to render obstinate, stubborn, to be hardened, all right? You're going to be presented, all right, with, the Lord is going to, the Lord may put you in a scenario where you have to give up certain things to embrace something that you may, and don't harden your heart towards it. Okay? The Lord may be bringing you in a direction where you have to go this way and not the way you want it. All right? You may have to roommate with a brother. All right? Whatever it may be, don't harden your heart and become obstinate or stubborn towards what YAHAWASHI is doing in his will. And that's what our forefathers did in Egypt, man. All right. It says, for if we are faithful to the end, trusting the Most High just as firmly as when we first believed, we will share in the belongings of YAHAWASHI. All right. Remember what it says today. When you hear this voice, don't harden your hearts as Israel did when they rebelled. Okay. So, and who was it who rebelled against the Most High? Even though they heard his voice. Was it the people Moses led out of Egypt? And who made the Most High angry 40 years? Wasn't it the people who sinned, whose corpse lie dead in the wilderness? Okay? And to whom was God speaking when he took an oath that they should not enter into his rest? Wasn't it the people who disobeyed him? So we see that because of their unbelief, they were not able to enter into his rest. All right. So, hey, be mindful to fear YAHAWASHI. Be mindful to always, overcome those negative thoughts with positives and hope, because man, this is bitter, and the bitterness is getting worse. The bitterness is getting, it's getting more trying. As we get closer and closer to the end, you can feel it. The bitterness is thick, man. So I just wanted to bring that out. Lord willing, I'll edify. We'll be back. Shalom.